The smell hits you first. It isn't the salt air or the fresh spray off the bow. It's rancid butter and gangrene. It's August 1850, mid-Atlantic, and your left leg looks like a crushed pomegranate. You're waiting for the doctor, except there isn't one. Not really. You get the guy who's best with a mallet, the carpenter. He's wiped his bone saw on a greasy rag, and he's offering you a shot of rot gut whiskey. That's your anesthesia. That and a leather strap to stop you from swallowing your tongue. God, the noise. The screaming? No. The sound of steel hitting bone while the ship rolls. Actually, scratch that. The silence after the screaming stops is way worse. It's not surgery. It's butchery with a prayer attached. Let's get into it. Or don't. It's pretty grim. The wood. It never stops groaning. If you've ever been on a boat, you know that sound. The rhythmic, tortured squeak of timber rubbing against timber. Now imagine that sound, but add the smell of bilge water and the damp, metallic tang of blood that's been soaking into the floorboards for 3 days. We aren't talking about some sterile, white-tiled ER in Boston. This is the orlop deck. It's below the waterline. No windows, no ventilation. Just a couple of swaying tallow candles that smell like burning cow fat and cast shadows that make everything look like a fever dream. By 1850, land-based doctors were starting to play around with ether. They were realizing that maybe, just maybe, cutting someone open shouldn't involve the patient trying to punch you in the throat. But news travels slow when you're 3 months out of Bristol heading for the Caribbean. On a ship, the sick bay is usually just a corner of the hold where they keep the extra sails.
And the hierarchy? It's a joke. If you're lucky, you've got a surgeon. If you're on a merchant vessel, you might just have the cook or the carpenter. Why the carpenter? Because he has the best saws. That's the logic. Hey Bob, you're good at cutting mahogany table legs, right? Well, Jonesy here has gangrene. Have at it. It's terrifying. The tools aren't even tools. They're instruments of kinetic energy. A heavy-backed tenon saw, a few curved knives, catlins they called them, that look like something a butcher would use to trim a brisket. They're kept in a wooden box lined with velvet that's probably stained with the DNA of 100 different sailors. You see them laid out on a mess table. The same table where the crew ate salted beef 4 hours ago. They didn't even wash the crumbs off.
Wait, let me check my notes. Yeah, the loblolly boy. That was the official title for the surgeon's assistant. His job wasn't to heal you. His job was to hold the bucket. And to make sure you didn't bite your tongue off while the surgeon, usually wearing a coat stiff with dried blood because they thought old blood was a sign of experience, started probing your wound with unwashed fingers. It's 1850, but it might as well be 1350. The sea doesn't care about the calendar. If it's broken, it gets cut. That's the rule. Ready? No? Too bad. The ship just hit a swell. Time to start. The smell. That's what hits you first. It's not just the blood, though there's plenty of that, coppery and thick, slicking the floorboards. It's the smell of fear sweat mixed with the briny, rotting stench of the bilges. You're strapped to a table that's been bolted to the deck, but even then the ship groans and tilts 15 degrees to port every time a wave hits. Imagine trying to thread a needle while riding a mechanical bull. Now imagine that needle is a curved, bone-shaving knife, and the thread is your femoral artery. The surgeon, let's call him Mr. Sterling, doesn't look like a savior. He looks like a butcher who's had a very long shift. He's checking the tension on the petite tourniquet. This was the high-tech gear of 1850.
a brass screw mechanism and a leather strap. He cranks it down on your thigh until the skin turns a ghostly, bruised purple. It's supposed to stop the bleeding. It mostly just hurts like a hot iron is being crushed into your bone. "Steady now," he says. He's not talking to you. He's talking to the loblolly boy holding your shoulders. He picks up the Catlin. It's a double-edged knife, long, thin, incredibly sharp. He doesn't go slow. Speed is the only mercy in 1850. If you're a good surgeon, you can get that limb off in under 3 minutes. If you're a great one, like Robert Liston back in London, who once accidentally amputated a patient's testicles along with the leg because he was moving so fast, you can do it in 30 seconds. On a ship, you're lucky if he finishes before the next storm hits. He makes the circular incision. The first cut is always the loudest, not the scream, though God, the scream is there, but the sound of the blade parting through layers of muscle. It sounds like someone tearing a heavy canvas sail, deep, wet, final. He's cutting flaps. You need extra skin to fold over the stump later, or else the bone just pokes out like a gruesome tent pole. Wait. Let me reread that manual from 1848. Right. He's supposed to retract the muscles. He uses a retractor, basically a piece of linen with a hole in it, to pull the flesh back toward the hip. This exposes the bone, the femur. It's white, surprisingly white. Then comes the saw. This isn't a delicate instrument. It's a tenon saw with heavy iron teeth. The surgeon places the heel of the saw on the bone and makes a long, steady backstroke to create a groove. If he slips, he's cutting his own thumb or the assistant's hand. The grit, grit, grit sound echoes in the cramped space of the orlop deck. It's a vibration you feel in your teeth. Every stroke sends a spray of bone dust, fine, white, and biological, into the air. It mixes with the tallow smoke. Quick side note here. If you're finding this half as gut-wrenching as I am while writing it, maybe hit that subscribe button. It helps keep the lights on here in the diary. And honestly, we're just getting to the part where they use the hot pitch. Don't miss the next one. Anyway, the bone snaps. That's the sound that stays with the survivors. That final crack when the weight of the leg finally overcomes the last sliver of calcium. The loblolly boy catches the limb, carefully, as if it's still worth something, and drops it into a bucket of sawdust. Thud. But you're not dead yet. Not quite. Now comes the tidying up. This is where 1850 was supposedly modern. Instead of just shoving a red-hot iron against the stump to sear the blood vessels shut, which was the medieval way, Mr. Sterling uses a tenaculum. It's a sharp hook. He literally hooks your arteries, pulls them out of the shivering muscle like he's pulling worms out of the dirt, and ties them off with silk threads. Ligatures. Except the silk isn't sterile. Nothing is sterile. Joseph Lister hasn't convinced the world to wash their hands yet. That happens in about 15 years. Right now, Mr. Sterling is probably wiping his bloody hands on his apron, which is already stiff with the laudable pus of 3 other sailors. He thinks the crusty blood is a badge of honor, a sign that he's a busy, successful man of science. In reality, he's a walking petri dish. He releases the tourniquet. He's looking for spurters. If a vein starts spraying the bulkhead, he has to go back in with the hook. If the stump just oozes, he's happy. He takes those flaps of skin he cut earlier, pulls them over the raw end of the bone, and stitches them shut with a curved needle. He uses the interrupted suture technique. One stitch, tie a knot. Another stitch, tie a knot. He's sweating now. It's dripping off his nose onto your open wound. He doesn't notice. He's checking the time on his pocket watch. 2 minutes, 40 seconds. A personal best. "Give him a tot," Sterling mutters. The tot is rum. Overproof, burns the throat, Caribbean rum. It's the only medicine you're getting. You drink it while your brain tries to process the fact that your center of gravity has just shifted forever. You're lightheaded. That's the blood loss. You're shaking. That's the shock. But here's the kicker, the part they don't tell you in the movies. The surgery is the easy part. The real fight starts 24 hours later. That's when the ship's fever, or the gangrene, starts to itch. In 1850, they didn't understand infection. They thought bad air, miasma, caused it. So they'd close the hatches to keep the sea air out, effectively trapping you in a humid, dark box filled with the bacteria of 50 unwashed men. If the stump started to smell like old cheese, that was a bad sign. If it started to smell like rotting garbage, you were a dead man walking. Well, hopping. I was looking at a manifest from a merchant ship called the Indefatigable, 1849. They had a carpenter perform an emergency amputation on a guy named Elias Thorne. Elias survived the saw. He survived the silk ligatures. He died 6 days later because the carpenter used the same saw he'd used to trim a piece of damp, moldy oak for a hull repair. The hierarchy on these ships was so rigid it was suicidal. The surgeon was an officer. The men were hands. If the surgeon died of yellow fever or fell overboard during a gale, the medical responsibility fell to the highest-ranking person with a sharp object, usually the cook. Think about that next time you complain about your HMO. Your doctor might have spent his morning boiling salt pork and his afternoon deciding which of your toes had to go. And the tools, God, the tools. They had a thing called a ghillie saw, basically a piece of barbed wire with handles. You wrap it around the bone and pull back and forth. It's like a garrote for your limbs. They used it for tight spots where the big tenon saw couldn't fit. Imagine the friction, the heat. Wait, you might ask, didn't they have opium? Sure, laudanum, a mix of opium and alcohol. But on a long voyage, that stuff was gold. The captain usually kept it locked in a chest in his cabin. It wasn't for common sailors getting their legs hacked off. It was for the officer's gout or the captain's insomnia. You got a leather strap to bite on. If you were lucky, it was a clean strap. Most of the time, it was a piece of rigging that had been soaking in salt water for 3 years. By the time the surgeon is finished, he's covered in you. He looks like he's been painting a fence with red gloss. He tosses the tools into a bucket of tepid water, not boiling, just water, and moves on to the next guy. Because in 1850, on a ship of the line, there's always a next guy. You're left in the dark. The loblolly boy swabs the table. The ship hits another swell. The bucket with your leg in it slides across the deck. And you just hope the silk holds. You hope the bad air doesn't find you. You hope the carpenter is better at building crutches than he is at surgery. Because the ocean is vast, and the nearest real hospital is 3,000 miles of salt and suffering away. Welcome to 1850. Don't trip. Boom. The hull groans. Not the wind, the wood. It's 3:14 a.m. I know because the surgeon's pocket watch just hit the floor.
cracked glass, silver guts everywhere. Doesn't matter. Time stopped the moment that mast splintered. You're on the table. It's oak. It's slippery. Why is it slippery? Don't look down. The surgeon, let's call him Miller, is sweating. Not the gym sweat. This is cold, greasy, I haven't slept since Tuesday sweat. He's got the knife. Not a scalpel, a knife. 6 inches of Sheffield steel. Hold him!
4 guys grab you. The cook's got your shoulders. He smells like burnt onions and despair. You feel the cold of the blade. It's not the pain yet, it's just the cold. And then he slices. One circular motion. The petite's tourniquet is screaming against your thigh. Your skin parts like wet parchment. You try to scream, but the leather strap, that salt-caked piece of rigging, is halfway down your throat. You're choking on the 1850s. He hits the muscle. The great flap. That's what they call it in the manuals. To you, it's just the end of the world. Wait. The lantern. The ship lurches. The tallow candle flickers, spits, and dies. Pitch black. Total, absolute darkness. You hear the breathing. Heavy. Wet. Then the sound of the saw. Scritch. Scritch. He's doing it by touch. Miller is cutting through your femur in the dark. The vibration. That's the thing they don't tell you. It's not just the cut. It's the hum in your teeth. Your skull is vibrating because your leg bone is being turned into sawdust. Scabone gives. It's a wet, hollow sound, like a dry branch breaking underwater. Ligatures! Miller shouts. He's fumbling. His hands are coated in 98.6-degree reality. He can't find the artery. The blood is hitting the floor, tap, 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 like rain on a tin roof. If he doesn't find it in 10 seconds, you're a ghost. He's digging in your leg with his bare fingers. 9 seconds. 8. The loblolly boy drops the silk thread. You hear it hit the bilge water. Found it! The pressure. A knot. Another knot. The ship rights itself. The cook lets go. You're still breathing. Why are you still breathing? Miller wipes his face with a sleeve that was white 3 days ago. He doesn't look at you. He looks at the bucket. Next, he whispers. He's not a hero. He's just a guy with a saw and a deadline. You're alive. Congrats. You get a wooden peg and a pension that won't buy a bottle of rotgut. I've been sitting here thinking about that bucket. The one Miller didn't look at. It's 2024 and I'm complaining about a paper cut. Pathetic. What would do it for you? What's the breaking point? The vibration of the bone saw in your jaw? Or just the smell of wet wool and gangrene for 6 months straight? Tell me. I'm actually curious. Subscribe, or don't. But if you want to keep digging into this filth, stick around. I'm Cole. Stay dry. Or whatever.